All right, joined now by Shamit Dua, who is doing great Pelicans coverage for the In The Know podcast, as well as writing for his own Substack, In The Know. Shamit, thank you so much for hopping on, man. Really excited to be able to talk Pelicans with you this year.
Oh, I'm super excited. When you hit me up, I was like, "Oh, sweet. We're about to talk some Pelicans and do it with a mix of other people and other teams. So this is a good time. I'm glad you reached out to me.
It's going to be great, man. And I think pretty emblematic of where the Pelicans are at. This team could go so many different directions this year. I think if I had to put a pin in it, they are the team that I think has the widest range of outcomes just because of all of the health concerns, but all the talent that kind of goes with it. What is the most interesting thing about the Pelicans as we enter this season?
Well, the most interesting thing about the Pelicans remains Zion Williamson. I think he's kind of been the focal point of the team from a narrative standpoint. The last 4 years, his availability and lack thereof has driven a lot of conversation and a lot of conversation about what they should do and how good they can be. So I think last year they saw how good they could be. They saw a little bit of what the ceiling might look like when he's available, and they also saw kind of what the floor looks like when he's not available, and it's not very pretty. So he's going to remain the centerpiece of the conversation, and if he is healthy, they were going to be a very good team.
No, absolutely. And got to see him in the preseason. I don't know if it was the opener or not, but definitely one of the first preseason games. And he looks pretty athletic. Still looks really good. Still looks like one of those dynamic athletes and basketball players that you need at the head of your team in order to win big in this league. Uh, is this the year? Is this the year that Zion and Ingram can be healthy at the same time and that things kind of come together for the Pelicans? It seems like things off to a good start outside of the Trey Murphy absence.
Yeah, well, a lot is riding on those two being available, and I would say people's jobs are riding on that. I think if this is another season where both of them are not available, um, there could be a lot of turnover happening within the Pelicans, both from a roster standpoint and a management standpoint. So there is quite a bit of stakes here involved with that. I do think for Brandon Ingram, with these new All NBA rules that you have to play a 65 game minimum, he's up for extension. I think he's going to want to pursue that in earnest, right? When you make yourself Supermax eligible, that is a significant amount of money. We just saw Jaylen Brown lock down $304 million, something approximating that. And if Brandon Ingram is able to push himself into the All NBA conversation and secure that spot, he's going to be looking at a contract similar to that. And so I think he's going to have a lot of external motivators to stay available. With Zion, that kind of contract isn't on the line right now, but kind of his legacy as a player is, because so far he's just not been available. And so, are you going to flip the narrative this year on that? That remains to be seen.
This team has maybe the most dynamic group of wings and forwards in the league. That has been pretty self evident over the course of these last couple of years when you can name guys like Zion and Ingram, but also Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, and then guys like Larry Nance Jr., Najee Marshall, even coming off the bench. There's a lot of reasons to be excited about this team, kind of from 2 through 4. The questions have always kind of surrounded what does the 1 and 5 positions look like. CJ McCollum starting this year, Jonas Valanciunas starting this year. I don't think that's the long-term vision, but it's certainly the present vision. Where does the team kind of go with those two spots, if you will?
Yeah, I think I'll try to answer the JV portion of it first, because he is, in my opinion, the most likely candidate to be moved, both from a cap standpoint and just an asset management standpoint. Um, this is a team that wants to get out and run. This is a team that wants to be able to switch across multiple positions defensively. And when you think of those concepts, you don't think of Jonas Valanciunas. And so he may be a player that's kind of the odd person out in this vision that the staff and the front office has for the roster as presently constructed. He also is an expiring this season, and they are a team that are currently in the tax, and he is their most movable salary piece to kind of swing in either direction to come under the tax or swing for the fences and maybe upgrade at that position. With regards to CJ, he's under contract for a little bit longer than JV, and I think he's a little bit more difficult to move. I do think he is still a very good player and provides value to contenders, but that kind of narrows his market a little bit. His age combined with the skill set combined with his contract, those three things don't leave as wide of a market as you would think. Like, if he was 23, 24, it'd be a little bit of a different story, but he's on the other side of 30, and he's going to want to compete, and so there's going to be a little bit of trying to get him where he wants to go if there's any conversation to moving him. But for now, the Pelicans don't really have a suitable replacement for him at the guard position that can be as productive as he is, that can get up the volume of threes that he can shoot the way he is. So I don't see him going anywhere, and they value his leadership a lot as kind of the adult in the locker room, to where those factors make it difficult to conceive a trade that the Pelicans would be satisfied with.
Tell us about the Trey Murphy absence, just what the general timetable looks like. I know these things can get ambiguous, especially towards the end. But what does that look like, and how does that impact the team?
So he's likely going to be out until late November, maybe a little bit further. They're very careful not to put a fixed time frame on it. This team has historically not received goodwill from the fans because they put a timeline on someone returning, and that timeline just is never met. So I think they're being careful not to put expectations. And from Trey's standpoint, he's also in a situation where he's not going to return until he's 110%. But I think the general timeline is late November, early December. And to me, it's a bummer because he had the potential to be the third best player on the Pelicans this season right out the gate. I thought he was in track for a big year. He's already one of their most efficient players behind Zion, and it was going to be a season where I was looking forward to him absorbing as much usage as possible, kind of figuring out, hey, what can we turn this guy into? But that's gonna take some time, and I'm sure as he returns from injury, it's not going to be a seamless transition. It'll probably take a few weeks, few months to get back to feeling like his normal self. And the Pelicans, frankly, they need his offense and they need his shooting. If you look up and down the roster, they just don't have someone capable of replacing that skill set on the ready. So the sooner he can get back, the better.
Intriguing player, and somebody that I held in high esteem after watching him a couple times this last year, and just seeing what he was capable of providing for a team that I think has the floor condensed as often as the Pelicans do, with both the styles that they play, but also the personnel that they have. I'm curious what the best version of this team looks like. And we did see some good stuff at the beginning of last year, but there are also some questions as to what that, like, how sustainable that was, and whether it was just more of an early season kind of thing. What does the best version of the Pelicans look like to you? Maybe whether it's pecking order, whether it's style, whether it's personnel. What are you thinking there?
The best version of the Pelicans is completely dependent on Zion Williamson. And it's the team embracing and leaning and doubling down into this idea that he is their best player, and everything else should be built with that in mind. Everyone else should be trying to fit around Zion and not Zion trying to fit in with everyone else. And so, that involves baking in a ton of possessions where he is the on-ball initiator. He is the primary creator. That involves him being the primary decision maker down the stretch. That involves furnishing him with adequate shooting. So, as you said, the floor can't be condensed as much as possible. That involves, finding multi-positional defenders, which that part they have unlocked. They have found the multi-positional defenders that you can surround him with that lift those units. Because the thing with Zion, people talk about his defense, and sure, he has room for improvement on defense, but his units are almost always good on defense. Why? Because they score. They score the basketball, and they're able to get back and set, and they're primarily playing in half court. They're not getting out in transition. And when they play in the half court and they play their switch-oriented defense, they're solid. They are, and they're beyond solid. They're borderline elite from a defensive rating standpoint. How much of that is real? you won't really know until you face real competition, until the playoffs, and when the teams are game planning for that situation. So it's tough to say, but like if their purpose needs to be to keep the scoring up and just be fine on defense, and I think that that's entirely possible. So that's where the focus has to be, and that's where the best version of this team is going to lie. Um, Hopefully that involves a future with Brandon Ingram. But I am of the opinion if Zion is able to stay healthy and you get to the point where you feel uncomfortable about that pairing, you should not hesitate to move on for a better fit. Um, Ultimately, I don't see them like breaking down that duo because of availability issues. I don't think there's right now Zion hasn't given them a great deal of confidence to fully lean in a way that moves away from Brandon Ingram, because you just don't know if how long he's going to be on the court.
And that really is the kicker right there, because as often like I love the vision that you're selling. I love the vision of, hey, we're gonna bet on the best player. We're gonna bet on the skill set of this guy. We're gonna bolster him with the assets and the personnel and the style that you need. But then if he's not out there, and if he's not available, then that's obviously going to be a big damper, and it could deal with a couple of lost seasons. And with as much money as he's being paid, as much money as they might be shelling out to Ingram and guys like that, I would be very hesitant and very nervous about that vision if I was Pelicans ownership. So it's frustrating, and I'm sure the fans are feeling that frustration too. So with that in mind, I have this team only winning 39 games, which feels shockingly low given the talent that they have, and that they put together a 42-40 record last year with all of the injury issues that they had. But with the West the way that it is, and like you just don't know who to pick and choose between which of these West teams is actually going to pop. And I think the Pelicans are probably more likely than any of them to kind of bottom out a little bit due to the injury side of things, and maybe to some fit questions. So where are you at with this team? If you had to put a pin in it, like what would be the win prediction for the Pelicans this year?
Look, I'm not overly confident they're going to be some 50 win type of team or anything, but I do think there's a little bit of overthinking going on with them. I think similar to what happened with Jokic's Nuggets with the year where, Jamal was out, MPJ was out for an extended period of time. You're playing Campazzo, you're playing, all of these players, and Jokic is dragging them to 48 wins, right? Pretty much everything that went wrong, that could have gone wrong, went wrong last year, and they still hobbled their way to 42 wins. And Zion played 29 of those games, right? Brandon Ingram missed, I think, 30
Right.
plus games. You had a litany of injuries to their main players, and they still won 42. So assuming, right, which is a big, big fat assumption, assuming they get even slightly better injury luck, it's hard to not see them at least replicating 42. I think the over under of 44.5, which is what has been set, is a bet that I would not touch. But I think that's kind of like the reasonable range to see where they're gonna end up. But like if they're healthy, like they're gonna blow past them. Like that's not something that's up to debate for me. If they're healthy, they're gonna blow past that. If they replicate last year's health, they should be even better. I don't know how much better, maybe one win better, but 42 kind of seems like the floor. So I think 39 is something I would say is overly pessimistic.
I think that's completely fair, and maybe I am betting against the wrong Southwest team with the way that Dallas has looked so far, and teams like that. So there are reasons to have faith, and I don't want to have that missed here. I just think that when you get started the way that they did with Trey Murphy already missing time, he was one of the most dependable guys last year, and you're already starting without him, and maybe that could be very frustrating at the outset if you don't have his spacing. So I'd be a little bit cautious, but like caveat all of that, it's saying Zion, when he is healthy, clearly a top 15 guy in the league. Brandon Ingram has had top 25 seasons before. CJ McCollum is still a very, very strong guard and has the capability to do a bunch of different things. And then like Herb Jones and Jonas Valanciunas and guys like that, there's still a lot of rotation talent here and a lot of starter talent here. So I don't want to get it twisted. Like, this team is very good. I'm just, if I have to bet on a team's health, I'm probably not betting on the Pels.
No, it's fair. That's entirely fair.
So we will see what happens, Shamit. What would be the most successful version for this team? What would you call that? What would be a good benchmark for this team for you?
They have to make it out of the play-in. So top 6, I think is what they should be aiming for, and what I would define as a success for them. They've been a play-in team the last 2 years. It's time to kind of graduate from that. And if they're healthy, I genuinely think they're going to be a home court team. But that just, like you said, we've talked about this over and over. You can't bet on that. But top 6 is sort of the benchmark for did you improve or not.
Well, here's to it. I would love to see the Pelicans in the playoffs again. The last time they were there, they gave the Suns hell. So I would love to see it for sure. I'd love to see Zion be able to showcase his talents on the biggest stage as well. So we will see what happens. He is Shamit Dua at Fear the Brown, covering the Pelicans for the In The Know pod, as well as writing for the In The Know Substack. Thank you, Shamit, for your time. I'm looking forward to talking to you again about the Pels this year.
Thank you.